Welcome to Sage Becomes Him. Why did the military kick me out for being gay? It's a very good story. It's a very good question to ask, and one with maybe not the best answer, but there is an answer to that, and I'd like to tell you that story now. Let's jump right in. After I was out at sea, my ship goes into dry dock. They put it into this big dock with water, and then they take all the water out of it, and you can see down to the bottom of the ship, which was really impressive to see. To see the bottom of an aircraft carrier, wow. To see the 4 big propellers, it was really an impressive sight. I will never forget being at the very bottom of the dry dock and looking all the way up at the flight deck. It was really impressive. But while we were there, all the men that I'd gotten to know while we were out at sea left and went back to San Diego, and a lot of the other guys got out. So I felt a little bit, not betrayed, but alone. And then they dealt me a big blow by taking me out of my department and putting me into a fire watch department, which was filled with other airmen. I think there's only 3 or 4 of us seamen that went from deck department over there, but majority were airmen, and it was a very interesting time. We had to follow welders all over the ship that were taking different huge sections off the ship and installing different sections, and it was really a big project that they did. So it was cool to be able to go to all these different places and see them, see what was underneath all the underneath the flight deck and underneath the hangar bay that I'd never gotten to see, because that's usually where all the hull techs and all the other firemen were, because I was on deck department, so we were on all the outward sponsons. So very cool time. There was a welder named Martha Washington, I think that's her name, and so she grabbed me every single time as her fire watch. She was just the coolest lady ever, and I loved going on to fire watch with her, because she was so chill and so cool, and she just made me feel like just another like I was a human being. She was from Baltimore, but we went places on that ship that, on the keel of the ship, these metal panels had not even been taken off since the ship was built. So it was very unique for me to crawl up into these little spaces and know that no one had been in there since they built the ship in 1962, which was really a cool feeling. 30 years. And so this fire watch, we had to just go wherever these welders were going, and these big huge rooms where they kept ammunition had all been cleaned out. So I'd be in this gigantic room by myself, and the welder would be on the other side, and so I'd be in there practicing the song that I had during wall competition that I didn't win, and walking one foot in front of the other, sashaying from one end down to the next, with no one in there. It was a lot of time to practice my sachet. One of the fondest memories I have of being on fire watch was when it was nighttime, and it was just me and one other welder up on top of the flight deck, and they had put these big metal sheds on top of the flight deck to work on the catapults and stuff. And so they had about a 4-inch tall metal framing, a metal piece that they had welded all around these sheds to keep sparks from flying too far away from where the welders were working. And so I'd be standing out there, and I started walking on them, and I had my boondocks on. They're about 1.5 inches thick, and I'm walking along these 4-inch high pieces, pretending they were high heels, one foot in front of the other. And on this particular night, it just happened to be 4th of July. So I could see all the fireworks going off in downtown Philly, and it was just me and that one welder, the only people on the entire flight deck. And I'm sashaying all the way around this shed, pretending I'm Cindy Crawford with high heels on. The deluge happened shortly before that. I had been in the department only for a short period of time, and the warrant officer that was there was in charge of all the airmen while we were out at sea or whatever, so he knew all of them. They all knew him, and he joked about me and called me Twinkle Toes. Well, in front of all the guys, I thought that was just the most inappropriate. If other enlisted men did that to me, fine, but an officer, I was like, no, this is not going to go on any longer. So I made the decision to turn him in and do a report sheet on him in the security office. If there's something I wish I hadn't done, that would be one thing I wish I hadn't done, because it backfired on me so hard. It was denied and returned to me, And the warrant officer, of course, denied all the allegations, and of course then cornered me in the department in front of all the airmen and just ripped me a new, I was devastated. And that's when the moments came when the airmen then were rallying together, and from breakfast, lunch, and dinner, they harassed me to and from the barge. And it was rough because, for an 18-year-old guy to be thrown into that abuse, it starts to wear and affect the person's psyche. It definitely affected mine, and it was rough. It was really tough. It was an unfortunate thing that happened over the summer. It was just nonstop. And they finally took me out of that department and put me on the barge. And I think they kind of knew what was going on because it was pretty bad. But I went on this barge for 3 days on, 3 days off, 12-hour watch, just going up and down these 5 flights. That was the most boring job I've ever had in my life. At the end of the summer, they had just got done kicking out 25 guys for being gay. They had all been turned in by one sailor who thought he was going to get a better, they tricked him into thinking that he was going to be somehow saved if he just gave names of other people. Doesn't that sound familiar? So they tricked him, and he ended up giving about 25 names out, and they witch hunted them and kicked them all out, which was devastating to watch because some of them had been in 10 or more years, had served openly gay the whole time, but didn't really throw it in anyone's face, but everyone knew, and they were fine. And then because of this one individual, they were all booted, and it was hard to watch that because I wasn't friends with them, but I knew who they were. They helped me put on makeup and stuff for the Wog Day competition. And Oakley. So right after all that happened, at the end of the summer of 1990, I had a sexual assault. And I was so worried about that I couldn't turn anyone in. I couldn't turn them in. And I told my one sailor friend in the military what happened that night and was pretty upset about it because who do you tell? I mean, you can't just tell every guy, in the military this happened. I mean, I couldn't imagine how much worse my life would have gotten if I'd said something. So it took about a month, and finally I broke down, and I knew I was falling apart because of it, and I finally turned him in. And the command's security officer, Ensign Oakley, who had just kicked out all those guys, now tried to kick me out. I was his next target. And over the next couple months, he constantly tried to harass me out of the military, saying he had all these proof and allegations. It's like, he had nothing. I was a 19-year-old virgin in the military, okay? Hadn't slept with a guy or a girl yet. And so I knew he had nothing on me. But I got strangled, and the abuse kept growing towards me. It was just really awful. I don't know how other 19-year-olds would go through something like that and continue feeling like they're worth something. I even wrote my Senator Al Simpson. I wrote his office and said, I need help. I'm being harassed. I don't know what to do. And he wrote me an encouragement letter, support letter, saying that, he would do whatever I needed just to let him know. And finally, I broke down far enough where I got a lawyer, a JAG lawyer. And that lawyer said this. She says, Ensign Oakley, I know him very well. I've dealt with him. I'll take care of this. And she did. In December of 1990, Ensign Oakley called me into his office, all pissed off. Have to get a lawyer, huh? Think you're so hot? You think you know everything, huh? Think you're so smart, huh? It's just throwing papers around in the office. It was absolutely ridiculous to watch because he had nothing and he had to drop the charges, which pissed him off even more. But I walked out of that office that day kind of feeling a little bit of myself gotten back because this JAG lawyer saved me. And so for the next 4 months, I heard nothing from this security officer, which was great. They put me back in my deck department, and I got to be around all the guys that I'd gone out to sea with, and it was so great because now I'm actually seeing people that I know, and the ship is so freaking huge. I mean, I was on fire watch in all these little compartments by myself, so I never saw any of the people that I had known when I was out at sea. And so for 4 months, I was in heaven. I was like, it was back in my department, and life was good. Life was really good. In April of 1991, though, I get a request to go see the security officer again. So I go up to his office, and I knew what he was going to say instantly. It's like I haven't heard from him in 4 months. I'm like, oh great, here we go again. And sure enough, he's like, Mr. Gerber, we need to do something about you. There's reports coming in about you. Da, da, da. I'm like, can I call my mother? And he let me call my mom, and I call her up, and I said, Mom, they're trying to kick me out for being gay again. And she says, well, do you get your GI Bill? I'm like, can I get my GI Bill? He's like, yeah, sure, you can apply for it. I said, Mom, he says I can apply for it. She says, then get out. So I hung up the phone, and he says, I need 3 incidences. And I'm like, what? I did not have 3 incidences, so I made them up on my paperwork. And so they kicked me out, stamped me with homosexuality, and gave me a general under honorable conditions and sent me packing back to Wyoming. A little bit of disappointment in me came because I loved Philadelphia. And I'd gone to school there for a semester, and I really felt like I could have stayed there and made a good life. But I didn't know anything. I didn't know what job I would have, so I just went back to Wyoming to get my GI Bill, and that was that. I went up to the VA. I sat down with the woman, and she just very kindly said to me, Mr. Gerber, you needed a minimum of 2 years active duty service to get your GI Bill. And I was 2 months and 10 days shy of that. And I fell apart. That was a devastating blow, and I hated the military after that. I hated it incidentally. I wanted to blow that whole command up, except for the few people that I liked, But my mentality went completely south, and I'm living in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and it made everything even worse, because now in Wyoming, those comments and those words from other people were coming out. Very hick, very cowboy town. Every bar was a two-stepping bar back then, and so there was cowboys in there all the time, and rednecks, and just constantly being harassed, And I finally said, I got to get the heck out of here, and I moved out to San Francisco. Now, here's the thing. This mentality of not liking yourself as a boy now had become a permanent thought in my head. And to look back on it, it's like, I get it now. I get where everything in my life came from. Every drug, every alcohol, everything I did stems from this moment when the military did this to me. And it's been a thorn in my side ever since, and I've hated myself for that. Ironically, the amount of abuse that I heaped on myself because of the situation with the military, it came to light last summer. Last summer, I was actually, I brought up all of the stuff, and there's even more stuff I didn't mention here, but I put it all together in an 8-page letter. My mom wrote her letter, we sent it into the VA, and the VA recognized the PTSD that I received from that horrible abuse from the military, and they gave me a disability rating. Now, I don't know what their guidelines were for doing that. I don't know why or what happened with. I just know that they didn't give me any back pay or anything like that. They just started paying me disability last September. So you can imagine, I'm 53 and was kicked out at 19 and been miserable since that happened. And so I do have some privileges from the VA, which were great. It even said in there that I get to use my GI Bill. I can apply for it and use it. It's so funny. So I did. I applied to get my GI Bill, and I received a letter last November saying, I think it was November, saying, sorry, you need a minimum of 2 years active duty service to get your GI Bill. I mean, could you die? Well, there you go. Now you know the story, the true story of what happened to me whilst I was in the military. And it wasn't always happy times, but a lot of things are built off of what happened and how my mentality was shaped from that moment forward. Eventually we'll get into what happened with the drug and alcohol abuse and all the trouble I got into. But thankfully, here today, I'm 107 days still sober and very proud of that. And I feel like life is opening its doors up to me finally, or at least I'm stepping into those doors finally, because they've been open for me, just never walked through them. So if you have any stories that align with this, or if you have anything that you may have gone through or know anyone that may have gone through something similar, please let me know below. I'd love to hear from you. And so, yeah, subscribe if you want to, hit the like button, and we'll see you on the next story. Thanks for watching.